Another impactful episode with a monumental ending. Let's talk about the new Foundation episode long ago, but not far away. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watcher Pass, and it's Friday, which means it's Foundation Day. Let's talk about the new episode, Season 2, Episode 9, long ago, but not far away. It's coming to Apple TV Plus on September 8th, 2023. It is another really big, really impactful Foundation episode. They're definitely ramping up on the tail end. There is only one more episode left in the season, and I am very excited to see that. But first, let's talk about this episode because it is just another really great episode. My hot take is I definitely think you should watch it. It is, like I said, a big, impactful episode with a great opening, a massive conclusion, and plenty of conflict and very impactful choices along the way. So I really enjoyed this. I liked it actually from start to finish. There was really nothing about this I didn't like. So I'm going to tell you a little about the episode, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then really quickly go into a recap. As you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the recap section. If you don't want what happens in this episode, I would turn it off then. Before that, I'll keep it vague and I'll keep it spoiler-free. So in episode 9, you get some resolution on some of the things that were happening in the last episode. Remember at the end of episode 8, Gaal seemed to be in danger due to a plot with Tellum and the other Mentalics, and we found out that Demerzel seems to have a lot more influence in Empire than we originally anticipated. So Episode 9, you get further into that. You find out what happens to Gaal. You find out a little bit more about Demerzel's origins. And then also you get to see this brewing conflict between Foundation and the Empire really start to bubble over. It is like I said, a big episode. There was a lot going on and I loved it. So that being said, things I liked about this episode. The first, look, I loved the opening. I love the way that it opened. It was very different from the end of episode 8. It gave you kind of a whole new story, a whole new kind of background on one of the key characters in this series. And I thought it was really well done. It was really interesting to watch. It was really interesting to see. And it really gave you some necessary information to understand more about what's happening and what will probably happen in the next episode as well. So the second thing I love, look, I love the conflict. There's a lot of fighting in this episode, and I'm all about it. And it's not just hand-to-hand combat. We get some larger scale combat that was really fun to see. It was a different kind of combat than we've seen before. And I thought it did a really good job of showing the scope of what is happening in the world of Foundation. The third thing I love, look, I love the choices. There are a lot of very impactful choices that happen in this episode, things that are going to have reverberations, not just in this season, but throughout, I assume, the rest of the series. I assume there will be a season 3 of Foundation. There are some very big decisions that happen in this episode, and I was all about it. And the last thing I love, look, I love the ending. The ending is really, really good. It's impactful. Like I said, it's a big, massive ending, and it is a very emotional ending. I really like how it was crafted. I like how they showed both the emotion and consequences of what was happening, and it really just kind of made me want to know what happens next. So all that being said, things I didn't love as much, a very minor point. There is an antagonist in this episode. We see this character. I was not very impressed with them. They didn't seem that scary or that powerful. I assume eventually they will be, but right now they do not seem to be the kind of big growing threat that they are made out to be. So all that being said, I definitely think you should check out Foundation Season 2, Episode 9. It is a fantastic, fantastic episode. There's a lot going on. There are a lot of big events that happen, and what an opening and what an ending. It is coming to Apple TV Plus on September 8th, 2023, so definitely check it out. And again, if you haven't gotten on the Foundation train, hurry up and get aboard. It is pulling away, and we are about to get to the final station of this season, so make sure to catch up as soon as you can because it is really, really good. I'm going to go into a recap now, so if you don't want to know what happens in this episode, I would turn it off because there will be spoilers. So remember at the end of the last episode, we had two kind of very big moments. One, Gaal was getting kind of transplanted, getting her mind taken over by Tellum. That was happening on Ignis in the strange ritual that the Mentalics had set up so that Tellum could continue on living through another body, take over that mind, take over that body, and continue existing and get stronger. Now, you also had this realization that Demerzel is a lot more cunning and a lot more kind of impactful than we thought. Brother Dusk and Brother Dawn find out some secrets about Demerzel and realize that she is a lot more in control and kind of the only true heir to Cleon the First. It seems like she has been pulling strings and kind of making sure that Cleon the First will gets propagated through the line. She's been kind of an arbitrator in that respect. So they call her the last Empress, Cleon's true heir, things like that. Now, at the start of episode 9, you get a really wonderful opening sequence where we find out more about that aspect, about Demerzel. You see Cleon the First as a young boy exploring the palace. He finds that secret passageway that exists in the mural on the wall. He's messing around. He's counting faces. And when he touches that mural, the parts, and he's able to go in. Now it's really weird that no one else discovered this before. I mean, they said that no one had been there for like 5,000 years. It seems like, I don't know, are they dusting the palace? It seems like someone at some point would have discovered this opening, but who knows? Maybe it is extra special. Maybe only like a emperor can open it. They don't ever specify that, but that might explain why no one just randomly stumbled upon it. But in any event, Cleon gets down into this chamber. And we're in episode 8. They found the secret chamber, and the Cleon projection came on and said that this was a prison. Now we find out why it was a prison. In there, we see Demerzel, but she is like suspended. She is cut up into pieces. It looks kind of like an art installation where the front half of her is at the front, and then there's pieces of her suspended in like plexiglass in between, and then there's her back half at the back end. She is essentially stuck in this prison. She is still alive. She is still conscious. She starts talking to young Cleon, and she starts building a friendship with him. She starts telling him stories about the past, trying to kind of like win over his favor with the hope that he would eventually free her. What we do find out is that she was a soldier in the robot wars when the robots fought against the humans. She was captured and brought before Emperor Aberanus, and that emperor seemed a little sadistic, but also very inquisitive. So he started to kind of like run experiments on her. And he also really enjoyed like inflicting pain on her. Now, she said that she didn't really feel pain, but she pretended like it so that he would enjoy it more. This emperor had her around, tortured her, performed experiments on her. And eventually he got worried that she would use the knowledge that she gained by being in the tower to restart the wars between robots and humans. And so he decided to make her a prisoner. So he built this prison. He dissected her so that she couldn't leave. She couldn't move. There is a kind of like laser force field gate around where she is. And he left her there. I assume he thought that no one would ever find her. Well, young Cleon comes in and finds her. Now we see Cleon through the 3 phases. We see a very, very young Cleon that we haven't seen before. Then we see a brother Dawn Cleon, a brother Day Cleon, and finally a brother Dusk Cleon. And that brother Dusk Cleon comes and finally frees Demerzel. So Cleon frees her. He scoured Earth, our Earth, real Earth, I guess, to find the tools needed to work on a robot, and he implanted a chip in her that he said will help her, but we find out it actually is kind of a blessing and a curse. It allows her to leave this area and allows her to walk around, but it has some specific blocks on her. It specifically prevents her from harming Cleon and also from transmitting herself outside of her body. So basically, she is stuck in this robot shell and she can't harm the Emperor. So although he has freed her from this specific prison, he has now forced her to kind of like be his advisor, be his companion for all time, because he also reveals that he is going to create the genetic dynasty. He is going to propagate his line, his code through the ages, through future Cleons, and he is relying on Demerzel to train them, to keep them in line, and make sure to kind of like make sure that his will stays forever. So although he is like freeing her from this specific prison, she now is in a new prison, a very nice prison, but still in a prison. She can't do what she wants. She kind of has to serve Cleon for eternity. Now we find out that this whole story was being told by the Cleon projection in the present day chamber, whatever you want to call it, that Dusk and Rue stumbled upon at the end of episode 8. Now that Cleon projection was telling them the backstory, and Dusk is very upset. Dusk says that like this union that Demerzel was forced to protect is not going to exist anymore. And the Cleon projection is like, you really think so? And then that's when the laser gate surrounds Dusk and Rue, and now they are stuck in this prison. This is now their prison. We will see what happens there, but for now, they are stuck in this chamber that no one else knows about except for Demerzel. So that is kind of the opening. It was a really fantastic opening. I really like how it showed how Demerzel and Cleon met, and how Cleon the first went from this like bright-eyed boy to a kind of manipulative older ruler. So it was a really fantastic opening. Now, for the meat of this, we'll start with Ignis, because that's where the episode goes next. And I'll just go through Ignis, and then I'll go through what happens on Trantor/Terminus. So on Ignis, remember at the end of episode 8, you had Gaal being kind of psychically taken over by Tellum. But lucky for her, Salvor was able to escape from her cell, and now she is getting ready to save Gaal. She takes those discs, those like brain disrupting discs, and turns them up really high and throws them into the ritual, causing all the other Mentalics intense psychic pain. I assume she causes Gaal psychic pain. I don't know why Salvor doesn't have psychic pain. I feel like she is one of the Mentalics. She is one of the gifted. She should also be in pain. Maybe she can just fight through it. Maybe that's one of her strengths. Maybe that's why she was able to resist the vault all those years ago. But while they are distracted, she grabs Gaal, shakes her out of it, smacks some sense into her, and they get running. They start to leave because they realize they have to get off this planet quickly because the Mentalics are not going to stop coming. So they run back to the beggar, being pursued by the Mentalics, specifically Lauren, the kind of like main henchman of Tellum. And Salvor tells Gaal to go start the beggar up. She is going to hold them off. Now you have two big things that are happening at the same time. You've got Gaal going into the beggar, trying to start it up, but inside is Tellum. Now, it seems like Tellum's actual body is there. It's not a projection because they have a physical fight, and Tellum was able to navigate to the beggar because she knows this island really well. So now Tellum and Gaal have a kind of mental fight and a physical fight in the beggar as they are trying to kind of overcome each other. Tellum definitely has the upper hand for most of it. And on the outside, Salvor and Lauren are fighting, and Lauren uses a dirty trick. He uses his mental abilities to make him look like Hugo to Salvor. He did that earlier when he first tried to get her off her guard, and now he is doing it when they are fighting to the death. It definitely affects Salvor, but she still fights through it and fights Hugo. So we have two conflicts going on at the same time. Now Tellum is still trying to use her mental powers to take over Gaal and get the prime rating, and while she's doing this, she pushes Gaal into like a scene with her father inside her mind where her father is saying how disappointed he is that she left their hometown. She pulled out her stones. This is causing Gaal some mental anguish. I think she's trying to break her down so that she'll be easier to take over. And then she pushes Gaal to kind of the worst moment that she has ever seen, the moment that she sees Salvor is dead 150 years in the future. Now, this seems to backfire on them because while they are out there, the mule is able to mentally realize that Tellum is there. He yells Tellum on, and both Gaal and Tellum see the mule. And again, the mule does not seem that scary. He is just a kind of old Caucasian man with blue eyes. He looks kind of like a White Walker, except without blue skin. He is not super, super scary. But they seem to be scared because both Tellum and Gaal scream, and this mental fight pushes Tellum out of this mental world, out of the future or whatever vision that she kind of mentally infiltrated in Gaal, and they're now back to the present. So this causes a little bit of a disruption for Tellum, and that means that Gaal and Tellum are fighting again. Now Salvor and Lauren's fight gets a little more dangerous. It starts to rain. There's a lot of mud. It is a good kind of overall fight, but Salvor has the upper hand. She eventually gets back to the beggar and gets inside. Now, Lauren is just behind her. He gets through the main door, but not through the airlock door. And while he's stuck in there, Salvor tells the ship to vent all the oxygen from the airlock. The ship does this. Lauren turns into Hugo as he's dying to kind of give Salvor that one last bit of mental anguish. But once he passes out and eventually dies from lack of oxygen, he turns back into Lauren, or at least his mental projection in Salvor is now broken, and she sees him for who he actually is. So that works out for Salvor, but we still have Gaal and Tellum fighting. Tellum is on top of Gaal, trying to drive a knife into her. Doesn't seem like the best idea because she wants to preserve this body. She wants to use this, but maybe she can harm her a little bit and then take over. Who knows? But luckily, Salvor gets there. She fights Tellum off. Tellum cuts Salvor with that knife as they're fighting. And it looks like Tellum now has the upper hand. She has both Gaal and Salvor on the ground. She has a knife. She's getting ready to do what she needs to do. And all of a sudden, boom, WWE style, out of the back of the ship, out of the curtain, comes Harry Seldon with a stick, thwacks Tellum on the back of the head. Tellum falls down, and Harry just beats her to death, beats her face, makes it into breaks it like a watermelon. Harry doesn't seem to be very happy about this, and Harry's alive. I mean, we thought he died. He had definitely drowned in that pool. We don't know if they just tortured him and then put him in a cell also, or if he drowned and now this is a new Harry. You don't have any context. Harry looks like he's been through some stuff though, so it's probably the same Harry. Maybe he died momentarily and came back. Maybe one of the Mentalics brought him back. You don't know why he's here, but he is here, and he saved both Gaal and Salvor. And that's it. That's everything we learned from Ignis. That is Gaal and Salvor and Harry's story. So now going back to Terminus, the blockade is up. It is preventing Foundation from leaving. And Empire has sent a lot of their capital ships, including the ship captained by Riose. And they get a surprise visit from Empire. Brother Day is there. He oversees their plan. And then he makes this strange pronouncement where he is going to go down onto Foundation in order to prevent bloodshed, in order to allow them to surrender in person now that they know that they are overmatched. Ill-advised, it seems. Both Demerzel and Riose say that is not a good idea because it's not. He should not go down to Foundation and kind of expose himself. But Brother Day is headstrong. He does it anyways. And there was an interesting scene where Bell talks to Demerzel and says, that what he's saying is making him nervous. And Demerzel tells him that she's an advisor and both of their roles is to do what they are told. And then she says that she picked Bell for a reason. And we don't know what that reason is just yet. But remember, we've learned that Demerzel seems to have lots and lots of schemes going on, seems to have a lot more going on than we expect. So there must be some reason. We don't find out this episode, but maybe we find out next one. Maybe we find out why Bell was chosen. I'll have some thoughts at the very end of this whole thing. So when the Empire gets down there, he meets with Director Cermak, he meets with the new warden, he meets with another person on the council, and he brings Polly Verisov, who he took from Trantor, from that execution, back to Foundation as a peace offering. Now, when he gets there, he wants to go see the church. The church had this very high heat signature in their thermal maps, and so he thinks that something's going on there. Spoiler alert, something is. And Brother Day gets into there. It looks like a meth lab. Everyone is in these like chemical suits. They are making something. It is, I guess, technically a church. It's a church on the outside, but inside there is something else going on here. Polly tries to kind of downplay this by saying, oh no, we're just making machinery. And he shows him a machine that turns iron into gold. And Empire gets pretty frustrated by this. He says those are just like parlor tricks. That's just alchemy. And he kicks Polly Verisov, who falls into a crate that spills over. And what spills out? These personal auras, the things that Empire has, the thing that only Empire has. It seems like Foundation is manufacturing these personal auras, and Brother Day gets really upset. He's like, this technology is only reserved for the Emperor, and you would sell it to the rabble? And Polly's like, no, we give it away. So it seems like they are manufacturing these for their protection, or maybe to kind of plus up in an impending war. You don't know exactly why they are making these personal auras, but they are, and they're making clearly some other stuff. You see some sort of like organic matter being grown. I assume that is the brain matter, the kind of like navigational matter that Foundation is using to power their whisper ships. So they don't need a spaceship to perform the navigation. Empire seems like he's done. He basically tells them that their church is an armory and their religion is a cult. He phones General Riose and tells him to take the Invictus within the hour. And then he stabs Director Cermak in the stomach. Empire seems to be having none of this. Before, he was very kind of like diplomatic relations. This will be great. Now he seems to have kind of switched, and he just wants to kind of burn this whole place down. Bell, Riose, and the Invictus get into a space battle. They get into a fight. And as Empire is about to leave, he sees the vault. And he realizes, you know what? I'm going to go check out the vault. Not advised again. But you know what? Brother Day does what Brother Day wants. So Brother Day is approaching the vault, and Harry Seldon shows up. He offers to talk in the vault. Both Harry, Brother Day, and Demerzel all go into the vault to talk. And when they get in there, Harry and Brother Day have a really interesting conversation about Harry's math and, you know, whether Brother Day can change that and whether Brother Day is an outlier. Brother Day seems really upset because he says he wants to be someone that is going to affect Harry's math. And Harry says, no, I can account for outliers. You are not an outlier, which upsets Brother Day because he thinks that he is this grand changer. He is this grand, like, progressive mind who is reshaping the Cleon dynasty. He is bringing in a queen. They're going to have a genetic dynasty after this, an heir dynasty. And he thinks that he is changing the formula. But Harry's just like, no, like, you're not even an outlier. You are just, you know, part of the whole process. And my math is still sound. And Harry also, during this time, talks a lot to Demerzel. He talks to her about kind of like, he seems to pose a lot of questions to her, mainly about like the scope of what his math does and like the scope of his history and how little blips don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But he does seem to recognize that Demerzel has a larger sense of history, has a larger sense of kind of what's happened during this time. Now, Brother Day gets very upset because Harry doesn't acknowledge how great he is, and so he basically says that he will destroy Foundation unless Harry says that his math was flawed. And Harry's like, I can't do that. Like, it's not flawed. And so rather than admit his math is flawed because Harry won't, Brother Day decides that he's going to destroy Foundation. Now over on the battle side, you have General Riose and the Invictus fighting. And this was a really fun scene because this turned into a space battle, like a Star Wars style space battle where the Invictus is firing on, I think, the Vindicator. I forget what General Riose's ship is called. His ship is firing back, and they scramble fighters. And so you have a bunch of Empire fighters fighting a bunch of Foundation whisper ships. It does feel very much like Star Wars, where you get to see like the pilots in the cockpit flying. And one of those pilots is Glawen, who is Bell Riose's husband. He is a great fighter, and so he is out leading his soldiers, leading his troops. in the front lines. They have a space battle. They figure out that they can take out the Whisper ships if they take out the back engine. And eventually Glawen penetrates the Invictus's defenses, fires a torpedo into like the engine cluster of the Invictus, which causes a chain reaction that disables the Invictus. Now, this seems like a very poor design because one little ship with one little torpedo is able to basically cripple the Invictus and stop it from moving. There's a giant chain reaction of explosions. The Invictus is kind of dead in the water from one little torpedo. But you know what? That's fine. The Invictus is an older ship. Maybe they fix it in newer models. But Glawen is flying away, trying to escape, and one of the explosions from this massive chain reaction hits his ship, causes it to spin out of control, and causes it to crash down on Terminus. Now, Bell doesn't know what happens to him. Their communication cuts out. So after the Invictus is disabled, Day and Demerzel get back on the ship. They're walking, and as they're walking, Demerzel gets a message, and she like stops, takes the message, and then starts to walk away. And Brother Day's like, "What are you doing? Like, this is our moment. This is what we have worked for." And Demerzel is basically like, "I constantly have things pulling in my attention. I constantly have other matters to attend to. This is your moment. This is not my moment. I have to leave and go deal with things back on Trantor." And then she says, like, "This happened a lot during your formative years, which caused me to not be able to give you the kind of guidance that you wanted. You grew up kind of flawed with uncertainty in your mind and your morals." Now, Demerzel says that she initiated physical intimacy with Day to try to help fix that, to try to help shape his mind, but it failed, and now she apologizes for what he's become, which really affects Day. He seems very hurt by this. He thought Demerzel was like going to be his queen, his like, I don't know, side advisor along with his other queen. He thought that they had a really close connection. And Demerzel here just basically kind of like lays it out that she was doing what she was doing in order to kind of try to fix him. And now she realized that she can't. And so she has other matters to attend to. Almost like breaking up with him, but she can't because she's a robot. Anyways, Brother Day asks like what he's become. He says like, "I am a man who is like making change happen. I am shaping this empire." And Demerzel's like, "No, you are just a sperm, like chasing your own random thoughts. You've already gone too far to change it. So just do what you need to do. I need to go." And so she leaves and goes to Trantor, and Day is left with his planet destroying decision. So Brother Day recovers from this painful interaction pretty quickly. He gets on the bridge and he tells Bel Riose to crash the Invictus onto Terminus. Bel Riose is about to execute when he gets a communication from Glawen. Glawen crash landed on Terminus. He survived though, and he is finally reestablishing communication. But Empire had already just told Bel to crash the ship in. So Bel and Glawen go into a private conversation. It's a very sweet scene where he tells, Glawen what happened. And Glawen's like, "You have to give the order. If you lose your post over this, the whole galaxy will suffer. You have to give the order." Bel is clearly distraught by this. But then after he has a quick cry, he becomes cold and gives the order to fire. And I wasn't sure if they was going to fire on Empire and kind of initiate a revolution, but no, he doesn't. He fires on the Invictus. The Invictus crashes onto Terminus. We have this big impactful scene of the Invictus falling onto Terminus. You see all the remaining people in Terminus looking up as this kind of glowing giant ship is crashing into them. You see Polly, you see Glawen, you see Director Cermak, and you see a big explosion, and you see the planet starting to kind of implode on itself. And during this time, Day is just watching this destruction and smiling. And that's the episode. That is the end of season 2, episode 9. What is going to happen next? Well, I'm not sure, but I think that Day is probably far gone. And I think that they are probably going to use this incident as a way to kind of overthrow the Empire, maybe, or maybe try to push a different emperor into place. It seems like my thought, and this is just a thought, there's no insight here, we'll find out next week, is that Demerzel realizes that she can't actively hurt the Emperor. She can't actively hurt Empire. But it seems like if someone were to remove Empire, then perhaps that would allow her to finally get her freedom, finally let her leave. And so I'm going to guess that maybe she was partly responsible for that assassination attempt. She probably didn't initiate it specifically because she can't, but maybe she helped to seed some of the thoughts with other entities to have that assassination attempt at the very start of the season. And now maybe she is using the kind of flaw that she recognized in Day years ago to cause him to change up Empire enough to cause enough uncertainty in the dynasty to maybe have the people overthrow, maybe have some other entity take over. Maybe she wants Queen Sareth to completely take over, because then that would be a different person. That would not be a Cleon, and maybe she could move against her. I don't know, but it feels like Demerzel is probably trying to kind of wedge herself free from this prison that she has been in, and this is all a process to do that. But remember, Cleon, the first projection, seemed to also know a lot more. So who knows? Maybe this is all part of his original plan as well, just to train up Demerzel until she could take over. And remember, Harry kept talking to Demerzel. Maybe some aspect of his math takes Demerzel in as well. I don't know. But all we know is Terminus is no more. Gaal, Salvor, and Harry are all alive, and Day is completely mad. So that is Foundation Season 2, Episode 9. Like I said, it's a really good episode. Definitely check it out. It is a fantastic, impactful episode from start to finish. And if you haven't gone on the Foundation train, I don't know why you're watching this now, but hurry up and get caught up, because the last episode of Season 2 is next week, and I bet you it is going to be a very good one. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.